So, like, take off to the great white north.
Beauty.
Take off. It's a beauty way to go. Take off, you hosers.
Hello, everyone. This is HOSERS, the HOSERS podcast, episode 124. My name is Thomas Williams, joined with Carter and Chris as usual. And we have a special guest today joining us from Missing Link, album of the year, Watch Me Bleed. Mike Ryan, how's it going, man?
It's good. How are you? Can you guys actually see me on your end?
Good.
Perfectly.
Yeah.
On
Good.
mine, it's like this little sliver, so I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
We'll just leave it
It's all
and
good.
pray for the best.
I know. We should, as Carter said, we should have been rolling of just like seeing the chaos of trying to set up this like StreamYard link, but it's all good.
Yeah.
We got it rolling. It's all good.
My wife is normally like my tech savvy, like she used to work for Apple and stuff, so she just like sets it up and then I sit down and pretend to be smart. So yeah, I'm in trouble right now.
Nice. It's all good. I usually ask for Apple stuff from Chris because he, I think, still works for Apple. But
I do. That's true that I do.
Yeah,
it's good.
But yeah, man, you've had a crazy year at Missing Link. Like just before we get into everything with hockey and just like you're growing up with the game and your love for the game, but yeah, like it's been an insane year. Like I said, like the LP was incredible.
Thank you.
Just how has it been like this past year? Really,
it's been crazy. Yeah, it's been a bit of a blur, to be honest, because we already were doing quite a bit. Like things were kind of ramping up even before the LP, and I think that I kind of had a feeling things were going to go well. Like after we recorded it, I was like, all right, this is pretty good. I didn't think it would go this well. So yeah, we've been traveling a lot. We did Europe right after the record came out. And it's been pretty much chaos ever since. I've got a show this weekend, and then I've got like a week or like a month and a half of normalcy before it like gets like crazier than it's ever been in my life, after that. So for the summer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw you guys just announced the Tied Down show.
Yeah.
And kind of by us in Detroit. Yep. Yeah, that's crazy with Marauder and everyone. That's nuts. How'd you kind of how do you feel about that kind of like just playing with, I guess, Marauder?
Well, like first I'll spin this here so you can see.
There it is. There it is.
Now, like
there we go. Well, that's life.
Yeah, those are, for me specifically, like I think right now some of the bands that are kind of like what everybody wants to go see are the bands that I grew up loving, even when it wasn't like a very popular style. So yeah, it's really exciting for me, like especially where we're playing like right before Cold as Life, I think, which is insane to me.
That's nuts.
Yeah, never really thought I'd be doing that, so I'm super excited to play with both of them. I've played with Marauder before, but yeah, it's always like at this stage it's cool because I'm kind of getting to play with all the bands that I just like would want to see anyway. Like we're playing with Mind Force this weekend, so it's like
nice.
Yeah, it's like Mind Force, Cold as Life, Marauders. We're getting to where like it's as good as it gets.
Do you feel that
just getting paid to mosh?
Oh, am I? Oh, there we go. Sorry, boys. I thought I was still on mute. No. Where do you think this like resurgence of a lot of those bands are coming from, Mike? Because I'm right there with you. I'm 36. I got to see Marauder play a couple times in my life, and I think one of the crazier things is I think the last time we saw them was after that God Is I LP came out, and which I love. I mean, listen, I'm a Master Killer guy all day long.
Yeah, it's awesome.
5 Deadly Venoms, I get there too, but I remember seeing Marauder, and there was like 15, maybe 20 people there. Versus now, a lot of these bands are kind of having a resurgence. Where do you think that's coming from?
I mean, I don't know. I think hardcore goes in waves anyway, and it feels like stuff just kind of shifts from time to time. But I think that it's been long enough. It's almost like, let's say when Marauder was putting out records that the grand audience didn't care about. It's been so long since Master Killer came out that it's like, oh, this is like, the kids that are seeing them now, it's like their dad's favorite band, which is kind of crazy to think about, but
So it
it's
makes me
like,
feel so old.
yeah, like I think, you know, me and my group of friends, it's like kind of the sound that we were into,
Hmm.
but it wasn't a super popular sound in like the mid to late 2000s. At least I don't think. It seemed like everybody was listening to like Bane and Have Heart and
Hmm.
kind of, you know, stuff like that. At least where I grew up. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I felt this way too, like when Disembodied did their first like reunion comeback thing. I was like, that's like, you know, one of my favorite bands ever. I was like, why is this popular right now? Like nobody cared about this. Not that nobody cared about Marauder, like they've always
Right.
been, you know, but I'd say Disembodied is even more niche and like people love it. Like, and it's cool that
Hmm.
bands get to still do this, you know. It kind of makes me think like, hey, maybe in 15 years somebody will pay us a lot of money to play a reunion show, you know?
I love that. Yeah, I feel like with a lot of those NYHC bands, you know, how do I word this? You almost want to see them before you can't see them, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
Leeway, one of my favorite bands of all time, and I saw iterations of the band, but nothing like quite like I would have wanted to experience it before Eddie passed away. So it's kind of one of those things like, you know, our contemporary, or not even our contemporaries, but the people that we love growing up are getting older. We are getting older. So it's kind of like, yeah, you almost got to see it when you have the chance. If you ever feel like there's almost like a bit more urgency to see some of those bands now.
Yeah, actually, like with the older bands, no.
Yeah,
um,
no, fair enough.
because I think that, dude, Hank, you gotta go lay down. Go lay down, man. It's driving me crazy. Um, I think he came right back. I always tell young kids like, yeah, the reunion stuff is cool, but the best bands you're gonna see today are the bands that are in their prime right now. And
Yeah,
if
fair
you
enough.
got to see Marauder during Master Killer era or you know whatever, like you
Hmm.
saw it as good as it was ever gonna possibly be.
Yeah.
I think that the reunions are really cool. As far as like me personally thinking like I'm gonna fly to like LA, let's say, to see a band do a reunion,
Yeah.
I don't know that I would do it. Like, and
Yeah,
it's
fair
not
enough.
anything against any of the bands. It's just like I love the Rolling Stones. I would not go see the Rolling Stones tonight if it was free.
Mm.
Like I just I don't want to go stand in a stadium. I don't want to go, you know, it's just not my thing. And so like um I think with hardcore bands like the specifically like when they're at their prime, like when the record comes out or whatever it is, you know, I tell young kids like you got to enjoy them now. Don't wait for, you know, 10
Mm.
years from now for
Yeah.
the reunion to go mosh for them. Like today is the day to go see, you know, Scarab or something and
Hmm.
like I just don't, yeah, I don't know. I think maybe after like seeing so many of their reunions over the years and a lot of them like falling flat and I don't know. I just, you know, some of them are awesome, obviously, and I think
Yeah.
just and that's awesome if you can get on stage and do it and still be, you know, as intense and stuff. That's very rare, I think, you know, and so
Yeah.
like that's just my take. Like I could listen to the record a million times, and I want to see it live in the way that I think the record is, but is that what's going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's a good point. I remember seeing Judge, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago in Toronto and was like, okay, that's the Storm. That's what it sounds like live. All right. Like who else, you know what I mean? And like, don't get me wrong, great band, but yeah, that's a good perspective to have. And I appreciate that. I mean, you're kind of leading the way with the stuff that you're doing and a lot of the stuff that's on Triple B and some of those adjacent labels. What was touring Europe like with that kind of roster of Triple B
oh
bands?
man, that was the best tour ever. One, I mean, to tour with bands that you love, like that I would go see Never Ending Game,
Yeah.
Gridiron any day, Scarab, like literally any of those bands any day of the week. And it's cool that we get to play with them all the time because I genuinely love them. And we just played in Vegas, and I was moshing the Never Ending Game. Like, uh, but also the guys are, some of our best friends, and they're really cool. So, we had a really laid back group of guys on the tour that were like fun to go out and do stuff with beyond playing the shows, which just made it an awesome experience all around. Like I've never done a better tour. Um, Sam from Triple B, shout out to Sam, was like amazing with just get everything set up, and Martine, who books everything out there, like they just took care of everything. So it's kind of like we just showed up and played awesome shows and drank coffee and rode scooters all over Europe. Like you couldn't ask for like a better setup. Like that was a dream come true type of tour. So I think like maybe in like 20 years people will look back and be like, man, I wish I could see that tour today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Sam's the man. Love Triple B, all the stuff that they've been doing, and I feel like Sam's even had like a bit of a shift in the kind of music that Triple B's been putting out. Kind of adapting to kind of the music that people seem to really be into these days, which is super exciting. I got another quick question, and you'll have to forgive me because I'm really bad with certain memories, but
Sure.
I know members from Missing Link were in a lot of different bands. I know you yourself were in a lot of different bands growing up. How many guys in Missing Link were in Recon? Is there two or three?
Just Paul.
Just Paul.
Just the drummer.
And you got to keep me honest here. So Paul's brother was
Tim.
a guitarist. Yeah, I don't totally remember, but he was in that band as well, right?
Nope.
He wasn't? Okay, I'm not
Nope.
remembering that very well.
Nope. Just Paul, yeah.
I was hoping that you may have been, like, did you ever travel with them or when they did tours and stuff like that back in the day?
Never.
All right. Well, I had a story that I thought, I was like, oh, maybe Mike was like road dogging for one of those bands all those years ago. But
no, it's funny, like Paul and I really clicked when he was in World of Pain and I was filling in for CDC, and we were actually in Europe on a tour together. But
okay.
I knew him. We lived in Buffalo at the same time. We worked at the same club. We had spent a decent amount of time together, but I think like really like got to spend a lot of time hanging out when you're on a tour in Europe and there isn't really shit else to do at that point.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was just it was kind of that. I saw Recon a million times, but I never was like out with them. And he's from Albany, like out that way. And I'm originally from Auburn, so like a half hour west of Syracuse. So growing up, I would go to shows west of Auburn typically if I wasn't going to Syracuse. I never made it out to Albany a ton. I'd go out there if there was something like really big I wanted to go to, but as a rule of thumb, it was not the area that I traveled to. So it kind of was like, we were almost going in opposite directions,
Yeah. No, that's fair. My story kind of goes out the window then. I was like psyching myself up. I was like, oh man, I wonder if Mike was there. Because the long story short was Recon came and played in my hometown when I was a kid, like where Carter and I grew up. And the show was put on by a first-time promoter, was able to get the touring package. The only two bands I remember, and I think they were from New York as well, Gaining Ground.
Maybe they were from Albany too.
Yeah, kind of in that area. Anyways, they played this venue that got double booked as a wedding reception / hardcore show. Perfect. And so the bride and groom came in and they were like, what the fuck is going on? Started like screaming at all the bands and stuff. So anyways, I was praying that you were a part of that crew back then, but
I'm sure that Paul will remember that vividly. I'm excited to ask him about that because he has like this crazy photographic memory when it comes to like random shows. Like for me, it's like there's like highlights and then there's just like I have no idea what you're talking about. Especially like shows that I've played, like with Missing Link in recent memory, there's a lot of really good ones, so they're memorable. Mm-hmm. But I spent a lot of time in a van going to play a show with like 5 or 6 people there in my life.
Yeah, fair enough.
There's like stuff where they're like, do you remember this show? I'm like, dude, I try not to.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, I think we've all kind of been a part of a few of those. But yeah, I mean, there was at least I'm assuming a throwback to 13 on one of the songs on the new album with a little bit of that drum fill. So I was like, all right, I fuck with these guys. I mean, I already did, but then I was like, to the people who know that band, they're going to know that fill. So here we are.
Yeah, it was like there was like a couple things on the record that we kind of sprinkled in as sort of like jokes to ourselves a little bit. like Paul playing the fill from 13, and you know, like seeing if like young kids would even like know it, or like maybe at some point some young kid is going to be like, this band ripped off the Missing Link drum fill.
Oh gosh,
Which would
that's
be
awesome.
awesome and hilarious. And yeah, so we did a few of those, kind of like, there's this Chris who plays in Internal Bleeding. He has like his catchphrase is like "fuck yeah," like he just says it to everything. So it's like we gotta like put one of those on the record. So on the track "Glory or Death," there's just a random him just going "fuck yeah." This kind of doesn't even make any sense,
So
but
good.
yeah, it's
I
awesome.
like it. There you go.
Oh man, that's sweet. I guess we should move into like a little bit of hockey. Just so obviously with you, obviously your hockey fandom and stuff, and you're tweeting with the Four Nations, so that's kind of why I just like replied and got
Yeah.
a response back. But yeah, so like, where did you fall in love with the sport? Like, was it a childhood thing? Was it like growing up and playing?
Yeah, so I played growing up from 5 until basically they wouldn't let me show up anymore. And my dad is like a diehard Flyers fan. Like his kitchen is orange and black. Um, and yeah, signed me up at 5, and that was it. You know, I was on skates as much as I could be basically after that. Um, and I just I loved it. Like from moment one, it was like the only thing that I really cared about. I would even like play baseball in the summer, because when I was really young, you like couldn't we like didn't have summer hockey where I grew up. They would like, you know, get rid of the ice, and I would be like playing baseball and like carrying pucks in my baseball bag, which is so dumb. I don't even know why I did it, but pretty funny. Um, but yeah, just always been a huge part of my life. Especially when I was younger. Now it's like I catch what I can. You know, my son just started hockey actually this year, so that's cool. He's
Nice.
Oh, that's
5
awesome.
and skating and doing all that stuff. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, so it was a Flyers household, really, and like when. So, what time would have that been with the team, really? Like, when was your peak of like fandom and everyone catching every
man,
game?
Eric Lindros,
Yeah,
you know, John LeClaire, Mark Recchi, that era, like I remember distinctly them losing I think it's a '97 Cup to the Red Wings, like just getting swept, and me just like, you know, like devastated. I
yeah.
actually also remember like watching. It was either the Kasperitis hit. I think it was the Kasperitis hit on Lindros and like knocking him out, and like hate like. I mean, to this day, I still kind of hate the guy for it. Like,
We
you
all
know, I'm like,
do.
what,
We
you know,
all
at this
do.
age, I'm like,
Oh yeah.
whatever. But I'm also like as a kid, I was like crying, and I was like, you know, devastated. But you know, like as a teenager, I was like, I think I could kill Darius Kasperitis if I tried.
It's
Oh
funny
my
that
God.
that's your kind of point with Lindros, because I've said it on the podcast before, but like when I was a kid, my older brother like loved Lindros. Like we're all Maple Leafs fans given where we live, except for Carter. But when we play video games and stuff, he was always the Flyers because you couldn't knock Lindros off the puck. So
Yeah.
he would like terrorize me when I was a kid, just like skating up and down the ice with Lindros. And I mean, until the Leafs got Lindros later on in his career, I was like, this guy's my worst fucking nightmare. I can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah, he man, when I think the first game I ever went to, like a pro game, at least one of the first, my dad drove me out to Buffalo to see the Flyers play the Sabres, and yeah, he like threw this hit that like literally rippled the glass and boards like all the way around their old rink. And I just remember being like, it was so loud, like the hit that he threw, and just like seeing someone that big and like he could do it all, you know.
Oh
It was
yeah.
like pretty incredible to see. Even like as a kid, I realized like how special it was, you know. Um, yeah, freaking nature.
He's a monster.
Yeah,
Like he's one of the biggest humans I've ever seen in real life. Like it is just
dude,
wild.
and could skate like,
Yeah.
you know.
I know.
Well,
Which at a time
those
when that wasn't the case, usually I feel.
well, if you do you remember the pond photo? It's like Lindros, Yager, Gretzky, Lemieux, like all those guys on the pond, they're all in jeans and they all have their jerseys on.
Oh
I
yeah.
think
Oh
it's
yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
th- I think it's Lemieux and Lindros are not on skates, but the rest of the guys are on skates, and Lemieux and Lindros are like a half a head taller than everybody, and they're not in skates.
Yeah.
I'm like, these guys are just units.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge dude. And actually, in the same era, I met Chara, like in person, like when I was a kid. So like, imagine like looking up at that dude, you know?
Now,
Were
as a
you
teenager,
a
you could take him as a teenager.
No,
Is that
no, I
another?
don't.
That
I
was
don't
another
think
one.
to this. I mean, I don't. He's got to be pushing. He's got to be mid 40s, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
Probably.
Char's
Yeah.
an animal. He's one of
Yeah,
those
I wouldn't
guys
He's
fight
where,
him now. Like, no
yeah,
way.
he's busy running marathons and shit, just
that's true.
every
Yeah,
weekend.
Were you a Hextall guy, Mike, growing up?
I was. Yeah, so like, just my personality as a kid, I was like a total lunatic, and so anybody who was a hockey player that was crazy, I liked. So Ronnie Hextall is like a hero. Just,
Really, eh? We've
um,
joked about it for a long time that like if you were ever gonna do a hardcore band and name it after like a hockey thing, Hextall would be a pretty hard name for a band.
yeah, I mean, what? Yeah, like just a lunatic of a guy. But I mean, I liked, like I loved any guy that was really wild on any
Yeah.
team. I loved, So hey, what are you doing, man?
so you, so
Knock it
you
off.
so you lo- you loved Reki then for sure.
Loved Reki. There's this. It's funny. I mentioned a lot to friends of mine that are into hockey that I know are into like in the '90s and 2000s. But there was this goalie named Dan Coutier who was like
Oh yeah.
a
Yeah,
total psychopath. And there's like an awesome video that you could look up of him. And I think he was Mike Richter's backup at the time, but just like attacking the goalie on the other team and just absolutely beating the dog shit out of him and like trying to fight other players. And like he was a wild dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like with even going back to Lindros and stuff, like it feels like that's a perfect player that could be in the modern game. Like now, like he'd be absolutely insane just like to be able to move and be that big. That's like it was so special back then, but I think even now with the modern rules, like he wouldn't get destroyed by Scott Stevens.
Yeah, there's no like,
His career ending,
they've
but
changed some of the rules to where like it would be less likely to happen. I mean, I see even now like
yeah.
there's some really good juniors teams here and stuff, and I just watched one of their games and they just like kind of don't throw hits where you would have thrown hits even like
Mm-hmm.
not that long ago. Like I hate to be the guy that's like when I was a kid, but I'm not that old. Um, so they kind of just always choose to play the puck, where like we would be getting screamed at to play the puck. you know?
Oh yeah.
So I think that there's like just a difference kind of in the culture all around. Where like, I mean, you do see guys start. It's starting to come back. I think kind of like hardcore, it goes in flows, and there's right now guys like Rempe and stuff are making it because if everybody's a skill player and you throw one guy out that can really fight and shake things up, it's gonna change the game. And
Mm-hmm.
it's cool to see that kind of coming back a little bit. Like I kind of hate the old guy like hockey's soft now. Like I don't think it's soft. I think it's just different. And it's cool to see it that it still has like an edge, and there's like young guys that still want to come out. And because I kind of thought like it was over for the most part when they started once they started the rule of like if you get into a fight in the last 5 minutes or whatever it is, you're
yeah.
ejected. I was like, what? That's like the best time to fight.
It's
Like if
Pretty
you're
true.
close.
losing, if you're down bad, at least you get to fight someone. But no,
It's the only time I saw
Yeah.
ice.
Is that?
yeah.
That's not true. That's not true. Carter, you're too humble, buddy. You were a good puck moving defenseman when we were growing up, so you're good.
Thanks, guys.
You guys
Thanks,
played
guys.
together?
No. Later in life, we got. I mean, it's kind of funny. We got into like we went to high school together, and then both liked hockey, both liked hardcore. Did some music together. Started coaching together, which is what we do now. Started doing the podcast together. It's all It's all very kind of cyclical that way. Do you see like a correlation between the two, like people being into hardcore and then into like arguably like the most aggressive and violent sport on ice, as it were?
I mean, yeah, I think now more. There was like a. You guys probably saw it because you're hockey fans, presumably before hardcore fans. Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
and there was like when we were maybe in like our mid 20s or early, I'd say mid 20s. All of a sudden, like everybody in hardcore liked hockey. Like it was like
Oh yeah.
the like, and I don't know
I
what
remember.
changed. I don't know what changed. Like maybe it was like Steel Nation putting out that like Penguins jersey or something, where everybody thought it was like awesome. But I
Yeah.
thought it was cool, and at the time, actually, just previous to that, um, a guy that would be awesome for you guys to interview is Joe Sanderson from Unreal City and Eternal Sleep, an
Okay.
incredible hockey player. Um, Sells himself way short, like just a freak athlete all around. But I was playing with him in Pittsburgh, like he got me onto the team he was playing on, in this like men's league team. And all I had to do was like show up in front of the net and score goals because they were all so good. Um, but yeah, there was like some sort of like weird uptick, and it obviously makes sense. It's like
Mm-hmm.
and if you've played hockey, I really think it makes sense, especially if you've played at like even a semi-competitive level, like past just like screwing around with your friends. Because I think a lot of the same, like there's obviously that level of aggression, but there's also like that level of like glory and misery and kind of like all the sort of like hyper emotional stuff that's tied into hardcore is also very tied into hockey. And like you see, like I said, my son is playing and cries often on the ice. Like they're not even playing games, he's just like learning.
Mm.
And my wife's like, when does this stop? I was like, oh, it doesn't. Like
Yeah.
he's gonna be like
Get,
16 crying on the ice probably. Like that's pretty normal.
it
Yeah.
gets worse. It
Yeah,
gets
I
way
think that
worse.
there's like a certain type of person maybe who's drawn to both.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of correlations. I think that they're kind of, like I said, I think if you've played both, then it's really related. Like
Yeah.
there's definitely no two things in my life have ever like spiked my heart rate like hardcore hockey. So
Yeah, and it's funny too, because I mean, like, how can I try and correlate the two? Like, I guess depending on how you got into hardcore, like for me, there was like a very clear line from like punk into metal into hardcore, and hockey was kind of a consistent thing during that time. But I mean, we'll go into a room, like I was in the room the other day for the team that Carter and I coach last week, and they were listening to Pantera. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, like, this is great. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong, but like, I was like, Primal Concrete Sledge. Okay, this is a beat. Like, this isn't even like a big song on that album
yeah,
necessarily.
yeah.
But it's funny because I think a lot of the themes of like kind of teamwork, perseverance. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a youth crew hockey team here, but you get where I'm coming from. Like a lot of those themes, they kind of shine through, right? And then of course you've got bands like Slapshot and 10-Yard Fight that are like the sports themes are like a little bit more on the nose. And I remember early on when the podcast got going, we've kind of had this inside joke that we would eventually get Eric Goodbranson on the podcast because he's got all these hate breed tattoos. So like, there is somewhere along the lines, like even at the highest level, people that, I mean, can kind of enjoy it. And I remember seeing a photo of him, like, do you guys remember the photo that came out years ago and he was leaving? He was like coming out of the pit for some band, and he like the caption was hilarious. Was like, oh, had a game and then went in and was swinging fists or something like that. And just the idea of Eric Goodbranson moshing is just.
I know he's from Ottawa area, so I think maybe
maybe a
It's
local
funny
show.
though.
Some band over there.
I like like more like musicians out with hockey and hockey out with music. Like I find like as hockey's moving, like there's more individuals in hockey now. Like you're seeing a lot of personality and a lot of like you don't so much fall into like the hockey trope anymore, like as it was growing up. Like I'm sure you remember, like I always hated all the hockey bros growing up around the rink because I didn't feel like I identified with the hockey bros, right? And then now, like the hockey bro like still exists, but I feel like it's like they're almost like encouraged to like be people as well. And so I feel like over these past like past 10 years, you've seen like that intersection happen because they're not just like, they're not all like muscle dummies anymore, right? Like they actually have some brains too and some interest. So it's pretty cool to start to see the intersection, right?
I just saw when I just went and saw that those teams playing the other day. When my kid was on the ice and they're all coming out like wearing their suits and stuff, it was straight up like 15 of the same exact kid in a row. Like
Yeah.
the bussin' haircut and just like
Yeah.
I just like couldn't
But
believe
The, like bangs.
that's
for
that's
some
hot
reason.
now. That's hot now though, right? That's
it is, but it's like I was just kind of like it is kind of funny to see like culturally sometimes there's differences just in like the hockey town you're in. It's like, is this all rich
Mhm.
kids? Is this a more like working class hockey town,
Mhm.
whatever?
yeah.
Because I still have this like hatred for like rich hockey kids in me. Because where I grew up, the next town over, like where I grew up was like gross and poor and shitty white trash. And the next town over is this town called Skinny Atlas that's like super rich. They're
Okay.
like 10 minutes away and it's like the biggest, rival. Like we would bench clearing fights all the time as like 10-year-olds. Like it made no sense. But um I see like kind of how they act, and my kid plays at a rink where it's like all rich kids. Um and so even like seeing them running around and kind of like messing with people, like kind of that aren't, you know, not on the team, just running by people and kind of like sort of flinching at them, but not really. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, like 15 years ago, we would have beat the dog shit out of you for this. like you're doing this
You
because
can
nobody here is going to do anything to you, you know? And it's
yeah,
like
you
me
should
standing there with my wife, who's of course going to yell at me. And it's like, but I have it in me to be like, to kind of like fuck with them back a little bit. Like it's going to happen one of these days where they're like, they go to mess with me and I mess with them so bad. And it's like, and I'm 6'2", 240 and have face tattoos. They're not going to know what happened, you know?
you
Have
should
you
pull a
had?
step you should pull a
They're
Step Brothers and just kick the shit out of them all.
I'd love to, but it's totally the I'm not above beating up like a whole hockey team of 17-year-olds. Like there's a
Fair
lot
enough.
of them, there's
That's
gonna be
valid.
yeah, but it's definitely the type of kids whose parents are gonna like, you know, lawyer up and sue my ass and I'm gonna be the bad guy for sure, but
I
it's just
feel
kind of
like,
funny to see,
yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I mean you're right. I mean, although you where you grew up is like not super far from where we grew up. A lot of those tropes and a lot of those themes still kind of remain the same. How do you feel like you're easing into being a hockey dad? Like to your point, appearances, the parents they still are, for the most part, they look like you'd expect them to look if they're, in their decked out in their Arc'teryx tracksuit and
Oh
stuff like
yeah,
that in
yeah.
the rink. How do you
Yeah.
feel like you'll adjust to being a hockey dad amongst all
So,
of that?
it's weird, but it's like, my dad um coached a lot when I was a kid. Like, my dad played and like was a great skater. To this day, could probably beat me like in a race. But he was never like an overly aggressive type of like hockey dad, where like my friends' dads would be like punching the glass, bloody knuckles, screaming, the whole thing, like getting kicked out. Like my dad was never ever that guy ever. Like he's a very like my dad's like borderline esoteric. Um,
Okay.
very like stern, like if you're crying, he's like, get up, but it's not, but no, like my dad's a very like laid back guy. So it's like, I think he kind of has the perfect hockey temperament. Like he demands respect, but he's not over the top like at all. Um, so if it's like you're laying on the ice, he's like, get up. That's it, and it's like, you're just going to do it because you don't want to deal
Yeah.
with the alternative, whatever that is.
Right.
My dad was the same way. He said if you ever like lay on the ice and you're not stretchered out, you don't have a ride home.
Yep.
That
Yeah,
was
exactly. And so like my kid's famous for like getting tired of laying on the ice, which he's 5, so whatever. But like my dad would not have tolerated it. And I'm not a coach, like I'm not out there and I would love to be, but I'm gone so often, like I just can't commit
Yeah.
to, it's like it would be the wrong thing to do. Um, so for me, it's like I'm sitting there watching and I have to be conscious of the fact that like don't be the douchebag dad that's like, trying to tell the coach what to do and trying to, like But I'm like going over if he's laying on the ice and I'm banging on the glass, like, get your ass up, dude. Like, you know? And so like it's hard at this age because he's just getting into it. I don't want to make it like a thing that he doesn't like to do. And my kid is pretty he's very much so like me, like where it's like you tell him to do something, he's like, I don't think so. You know, you gotta like work with him a little bit. And so like the last thing I'm ever gonna be, hopefully, knock on wood, is like the guy that's like when my kid's older, like screaming in the stands at my kid to scream at the refs. You know what I mean? You don't gotta
Yeah.
scream at like I played with this one kid who was like a phenomenal hockey player, and he quit at like 14 because his dad just I mean, all the time screaming at him, like in his face, off the ice, like, you know, kind of the stereotypical 90s expectation of your kid to somehow be a pro and making millions of dollars, and your kid doesn't even like want to show up because you suck. um, but yeah, I don't know. I've got my wife with me every time we're there, and she's much more like understanding, you know. And I think for me, it's like I just want. It's almost like I don't care if you're good or not, but it's like you got to show up and try, you know. And it's like
Yeah.
convincing a 5-year-old to try is not really easy to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
right now, I'm just sort of stuck in this limbo, you know.
Yeah. It must be cool to just like watch him do something that you love so much. So,
Yeah, and he
and
gets
be like
joy
that.
from it too. Like he loves
Yeah.
it. So it's cool. He has his moments where he's crying and my feet are cold, and but it's like every time I get like frustrated with that, I'm like, oh, I remember doing that. You know, I remember like my dad taking off my skates and like breathing into them and putting them back on my feet and being like, dude, just go do it. You know, like
Yeah.
so. I try to like remember that that was me, you know, and
Yeah.
see how it turns out. It's going to go one of two ways with him. He's either going to be too sensitive and not want to do it, or he's going to become crazy. So,
Yeah. That's
you know,
called
we'll
growth,
see what
right?
happens.
That's called growth.
Yep, yep.
How
Oh man.
I guess moving on to like modern hockey, and that's like the link here is the Four Nations tournament. What's I know it's over and done with, but what's your take?
That first game that the U.S. and Canada played against each other, I think was the best hockey game I've watched, like that I can actually remember, like besides being a kid. Um,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Even like really high level. I mean, in the NHL, you're just not getting all that high level of a guy on the same team. And then like the All Star game, they're not trying, and then the
Yeah.
Olympics kind of suck a lot of the time. So yeah, that was I actually think the best game I've ever watched. Kind of
Yeah.
mind boggling to see, you know, like how like I called my dad before they were playing to be like, hey, this is going on tonight, and then I texted him and you know he texted me back like 30 seconds into the game. He's like, are you watching this? This is crazy, you know. And my dad is not really like a big texter. He's like you text him and he says like wow. So yeah, it was cool. Like the just everything about it was awesome. And I, I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a Flyers fan, but I also don't really care. Like I just want to watch hockey.
Yeah.
As like a fan of the sport, I could watch any two teams if it's a good game, and I will immediately
Yeah.
turn off any two teams if it's a slow, boring game, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I get to see all these guys now that I wouldn't normally really be rooting for, and I'm excited to see them. And then even, you know, the Canadians, I'm like, yeah, okay, this is cool. You know, like it's just cool to see guys. You know, I was a little bummed that Konechny didn't get played, but just as a Flyers fan, it'd be cool to like have a guy on the ice. But it's kind of like, you know, you got to be honest and be like, dude, this there's so much depth. It's like, where do you even put some of these guys? Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's crazy to see. So
Yeah. No,
yeah,
that
Yeah, like
was.
even
Oh no, go ahead. I was just gonna say, I was like, I was speechless. I was like, after that
yeah.
first like Canada US game, I was like, I had no words. My dad, again, same thing, very short texter, knows 3 words, old hockey dad, and he was like on the phone the entire game. I was like, nice to hear from you too.
yeah,
Like it was wild. Like it was that was like my Stanley Cup for the past 10 years. Like that
Dude.
wrapped it all up for me.
Yeah, I don't know that like yeah, I mean if you get I'm trying to think back on like a game 7 Stanley Cup where the intensity is that high because that's what's interesting is like it was crazy the level of intensity that they brought to that like I did not expect. Like people
Mhm.
were kind of chirping a little bit. They're like, "Oh, we think this is going to be a good game." And I'm kind of like, I don't know if maybe I'm like jaded a little bit towards the idea of like the nation's teams because the Olympics are just oftentimes fall short for me. Um,
Yeah.
but boy, I'm glad I tuned in right at the beginning because I actually tuned in like a half hour early for whatever reason, just to, like watch the pregame because they were even hyping it up, and I'm like, okay. And then they drop the puck and they start fighting. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Oh, it was like
I know.
even the pregame interviews, they were like, so like how do you feel? Like even when they're talking to the Kachucks, they're like, how do you feel? And they're like, oh, I'm getting ready for the biggest game of my life. And like that's when it really like sunk in. I was like, fuck, I'm dialed right now. Like there's no way I'm moving.
Yeah, I don't. What is it about it that you think made it so like this was the one where it's going to be this level of intensity?
Yeah,
I
like it was interesting just because like the it's just a made up tournament. Like it was completely created just to get best on best just before the Olympics next year and then try to get the NHL's own version. So it's like
Dude,
it
fuck the
felt
Olympics.
yeah.
yeah.
No, I know there's no physicality with it, but it's like it's because we haven't had best on best, quote unquote, in so long that it's like it was the first instance of it in a very long time. I think it was 2016 was the World Cup in Toronto. Yeah, so like it's I think just that and then mixed in with just Canada US, the Kachucks versus McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon, you get like just this insane hype and then you're like representing your country, all that stuff. And these guys, like even I think it was Eichel was saying like, oh yeah, like that was the biggest game of my life. Again, said it. And then people and then I think the reporter said, like, you won the Stanley Cup. And he's like, yeah, I
I
did.
did.
Just like
But
yeah, I did, but this means more.
I
even
think,
the game has like grown so much in the past 10 years, and the talent like obviously the talent's always been at the top level in the NHL, but the game is so much faster, so much more technical. Like there's no like even 10 years ago you still had guys that were playing in the NHL that like grew up in the era where they were still learning how to play goalie and like all this stuff. And so like I think this level of hockey is the first time we've ever seen like actual best on best when we've figured out the game. And it's like I think that's a big contributor to it as well. It's just like this is the most intense we've ever seen this sport.
oh yeah. I mean, they're right now, like if you put the best of the best right now against any other era, they're by far better. Like it's
Yeah.
not even
Mhm.
like a little bit. It's like leaps and bounds faster.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, that was unbelievable. I really do think it's the best game I've ever watched. It had everything that I love about hockey in one 60 minutes, or whatever the hell it got
Even
stretched
just the
out to.
first
But
period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
how did they were still throwing hits like later too? Like
Yeah,
it
yeah.
cooled down a little bit, but dude, the actually like the I love John Tortorella. Like it was my dream come true when he became the Flyers coach because I'm like, this is what we need. We need like somebody with some fire to like figure shit out here, and which is a whole nother story. But them like cutting to him just screaming, I was like, oh, this is like the perfect game.
Yeah. It just like it wrapped up everything of like the actual on ice product, but then entertainment around it with the fights and just like the whole
Which is what hockey
pageantry of it.
needs.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
100%.
they it's like I kind of get the idea of like let's keep hockey quote unquote safe or make it safe, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like people want to see fights. People watch boxing, people watch MMA,
Mhm.
and it's like it is part of the game that I think if they ever tried to totally get rid of, just make a new league and you'd be rich like immediately type of deal.
Yeah.
Um, because like I almost feel like people who want to get rid of it never played hockey. Like they don't understand how much that can shift a game and like what it really means and like what a role like real on ice respect plays when you're
Yeah.
talking about going into a corner with a guy, or it's just, it means a lot to the game. And
Yeah.
and people who don't understand, people that could not tell you how icing happens could tell you that it's awesome watching 2 6'5" guys on skates fight. Like
Yeah.
that's what they want to see.
That
Like,
and yeah, I
Well,
think that was
it's
all
true.
also
Yeah.
like what happened during Four Nations. Like that
Yep.
was the casual viewer. It was on ABC.
Exactly.
It was like nationally broadcast, and then just
Yep.
like I think maybe that was part of it with the players being like, let's give them a show right away, keep these people tuned in, but also like they vehemently hated each other and just
Yeah,
needed
yeah.
to get like this ball of energy just released out of them. I think it was just a perfect like whole sentiment of the modern game, and just how even like if you get rid of fighting, then there's not that anticipation that anything could happen at any time.
Yeah.
Like even just as watching as a product, part of it is like you could watch the sport, watch a game. If you're watching a basketball game, a baseball game, if there's a fight, they immediately try to break it up. They immediately like play it down, whatever. And then with hockey, it's like anything could happen at any time. You have the post whistle scrums like every 10 minutes at least. And then, yeah, it's just this like whole waiting period of like this wave of violence,
Well,
I guess,
it's
that you're kind of watching through.
the code. Like it's even now. Like I'll go play like men's league with like 80-year-olds. Like just drop in hockey, and someone skates across the crease, and I'm like seeing red. I'm like ready to kill this guy that I've never met before because I'm like, oh, you breathed on my goalie, and it's like it's in the back of your mind all the time.
Got to pay the
And like
price for that.
that's what I mean. Yeah, you're gonna like this old fucker is ready to fall apart, and I'm gonna try and go beat the wheels off him because he went too close to the crease.
Yeah.
The best part is though is that you'd have a guy like on the other team being like, well, Gerald shouldn't have been fucking around. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Pay the price.
Yeah, I remember when I was playing in Pittsburgh, like I was still young, like I was an adult, but I was like I think 20 and maybe 21. But like playing that men's league that Joe from Eternal Sleep got me into was like it was a pretty high level. Very fast, very intense, and like there'd be guys chipping each other up pretty good, like where you'd be like, dude, you're like 40, but they're like the hardest like union worker 40-year-old man ever. And then I would play sometimes in this like league I was like way too good to be playing in. Like it was like guys that were like learning to play hockey, and me being dumb and crazy. Like this kid took a run at me one night and dropped me, and then I got up, and I just pushed him, and the kid like went flying, and I'm not kidding, like this kid did not know how to play hockey, but he stood up and dropped his gloves like to fight me. And he was like, I mean, the top of his head was maybe like at my chin, so I'm like holding him out like by his jersey, and he's swinging and like cannot hit me. And I just turn and I look at the ref, and I'm like, what do you want me to do? And he's like, well, he wants to fight. So I'm like, okay. Just punch him. And like, he had a cage on, so I left my glove on, and just dropped
Yeah.
him. And, after the game, like, for whatever reason during those games, you'd play back to back. So you could fight in the first one, and guys would all the time because the second game, they'd let you back on the ice, which is insane.
Yeah.
And for like beer league, like the worst level of hockey possible. But in between the games, I'm like out in the lobby, basically like hanging out to like waiting to go back. And the kid is out there, and he comes up and he's like, hey man, I just want to let you know, leave it all on the ice. And like I had this moment where I'm like, yeah, I mean, or else what? Like
Yeah.
I don't have to.
First of all, I didn't even want to fight you. You made me. Second, I knocked you out with one punch without even trying. And third, now we're here. There's no one to save you. Like I don't even know you. Leave it on the ice. It's like, oh, this is like some trope that you read on the internet that you're supposed to do with hockey. It's kind of funny to think like I know that's like what every like old time guy would say, like leave it on the ice. And then you ask me like, we were fighting in the lobby, we were fighting in the locker rooms, we were fighting in the parking lots, and like, maybe it's just like my personality, but I was just like, dude, what? Like, yeah, we would have if you just left me alone. You know, I don't really care to like beat you up again, basically. But
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about it, but now I am. Like,
yeah, but it's. I mean, people get like. I haven't played. I've been living here now for 10 years plus, and I have not. I mean, I've stepped on the ice, but I haven't played in a game since I moved out of Pittsburgh, which kind of sucks. But I'm just too busy, and it's late at night, and work, and band, and kid, and whatever. Um, but it's like I have it in me that I know if someone crashes my goalie, it's gonna be a long night in beer league. Like, for better or worse, like I know like most of my friends that are like legitimate hockey players would be like, dude, you're a loser. What is your problem? But I don't
I
Yeah.
know.
love it. Okay, I got a quick question. Sorry, I had to leave a couple times. My daughter is not happy, so I had to go check a couple times on her. You know, dad stuff. You guys get it.
So
Yeah.
mine's teething. So yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I had a question here. I hope it translates. All right, so bear with me here, Mike. If you had to pick 5 hardcore guys to be on a hockey team with, who would they be? And on the other side of it, if you had to pick 5 hockey guys to be in a hardcore band, who would it be? And it could be like your own, like, could be like a vibe thing. Could be like this guy would, he would be a great front man or whatever. Like, don't overthink it. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So like immediately, because I know so many guys in hardcore that have played hockey that, or whatever. But immediately I'm gonna say Joe Sanderson because I've played hockey with him and because he's also like a champion Muay Thai fighter now. So who else could you have better on the ice than him? Man, there's a lot of like goons, and it depends on what type of squad I'm trying to build, right? Like you gotta have somebody with some style that
fair
is
enough.
gonna be able to pull something off. So that makes it difficult. But yeah, definitely Joe. Maybe like we'll put Brody King in net because he's huge.
Oh yeah, good call.
Seems like he's mean too. So you'd get like a double, you'd get like a crazy goalie too, which is good. Not really going to take anybody coming through the crease kindly.
Just lariat someone.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like a small left winger who's got some speed.
Okay.
I gotta brainstorm this one for a second. Man, I'm trying like immediately for me, I always go to like front men, but then I'm like, that's kind of like you can't just do that, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Even if they had like the athletic, like some frontman, you're just like,
Yeah,
oh my
yeah.
god, this person doesn't stop moving. Like, how do they have the stamina for that? They
for
might
sure.
be able to service a role for you.
Yeah, like I kind of have this weird feeling that he can't even ice skate, but Dom from Simulacra,
Okay.
and Final Resting Place, their singer, for sure a hard pitter. I have this weird feeling that he'd be like, dude, I can't ice skate. Why would you say me? But I feel like if I could get him up to par, like he'd be a sick player.
I love it.
I'm gonna go with our guitar player Evan would go left wing. Like he's kind of small, but a talented guy. Like he pulls the tricks out of the bag that you just didn't even know were there. What am I at? What am I at? 4? I gotta pick one more, or do I need 2 more?
Yeah.
One more.
One more, because you can play.
Yeah,
Zach
you can
Barone,
play.
one of my best friends. Zach Barone sang in Sudden Demise.
Okay.
Awesome hockey player, hard as nails, concrete union worker, punch a hole through your head. Like,
Love it.
put him up against probably any fighter in the NHL today, and they're gonna have at least a good tilt. So, Zach Barone for sure should have been my first pick. Sorry, Zach. He's gonna beat the shit out of me now.
Well, who do you think could do the opposite? Like what hockey guy could be in? Because I immediately go to like. I had a list of a couple of guys. I could see like a Kachuk, maybe fronting a band, right?
Both like the brothers, like one sings, one plays bass or something, and like he's not even that good, but it's like fuck it, they're the crazy brothers.
Yeah, so Brady plays bass. Yeah.
Brady.
No.
Brady.
No,
he's taller. He's like that's.
No, I know, but remember the videos of Brady singing "Mr. Brightside" at karaoke that came out a few years ago?
Yeah,
he's got to be the front man. He's got to be the front man.
I don't know. A front man would be like, yeah.
Definitely.
I feel like,
I'm trying to think of Northeastern guys because it's like, come on. It's hockey. You know, I'm not picking. No disrespect to California and shit, but they're all surfing. All right, hockey guys, right? To modern hockey guys to play. I. It's hard to say. I'm gonna take like Mishkov. Like we're gonna get like
Okay.
a like freaky
Sick.
vibe, you know? Like we're not really sure what he's thinking at all. So we've got those
That's
two. We
good.
got the Kachucks. We got Mishkov.
Is he on drums? Like that weird
Yeah,
drummer that like doesn't talk to anyone? Yeah.
Matthews drummer for sure.
Oh yeah, that's good.
For
There
sure.
we go. There we
Like
go.
in the pocket. Too much style doesn't even make sense. Like doing too much shit, you know. And like kind of like seems like he's mad at everybody all the time, like secretly, like the whole band's fucking up, not me. He's got like kind of that vibe a little bit, I think.
That's excellent.
You know what I'm talking about. Like you could see it.
Oh,
Like,
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that he's ever
Oh,
been
yeah.
super vocal about it, but it's like I see that face in that suit, dude. I know what that feels like, you know.
I love that.
And
You got
then
like Marner can like road dog for them or something. He can sell t-shirts. That's fun.
And then I need one more, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be current. If you want to pull somebody
I
from
was gonna
like,
say
back in the day.
he's still playing, but Brizgalov, right?
Oh yeah.
Like just a freak, like
Yeah.
crazy guitar player, probably doing weird solos that don't make sense. And I like for me, like with hardcore, like I think it's like 50% characters that make
Yes.
the bands like what they are. Like you've got to have some weird vibe going on where like if you I don't like anything that just sounds like a copy of another band. So like all my favorite bands have like totally different sounds for the most part, I think. But there's also like an element of like this dude is a freak. You know? Like
Yeah,
there's
straight
where
up.
it's like a mixture of just being a freak and style and like aggression. And you know, I think that all those guys we listed for my NHL hardcore band are
I like
that.
it.
So
I like it.
Who's missing links freak then?
me 100%. I mean all of us really.
Right.
We've got some pretty funny, like Chris who I mentioned earlier. He is a freak, but in a different way. Like we have like pictures of him, I'm not kidding, looking at pictures on his phone of cheeseburgers.
Oh yeah.
But as
You
far
got to
as like
visualize the dream, Mike. You have to visualize the dream.
he's doing a lot of visualizing. But I think as far as like somebody who's just into the weirdest shit, it's for sure me. You know, where it's like if we're gonna do some like really weird out there idea, it's gonna be because I convinced them to do it.
Okay. What was the last one that you had? I mean, I don't want to like spoil a future release, but was there one that somebody kiboshed recently? They're like, absolutely not. We're not doing that, Mike.
Actually, no. But I don't.
That's a good band to me. I like
So
that.
I don't pitch them all because some of them I'm like there's a lot of stuff that I want to do musically or like whatever, even design wise that I'm like this doesn't really fit into the it's not gonna work. And then there's stuff that I'm like I know it would work, but the band guys are like this isn't what we want to do, which is fair. I can't play guitar, so they ultimately have their say. Um, but it's like kind of my job to take what they give me and make it freaky or but we did like I really wanted to figure out for the LP a way to like incorporate some female vocals and just like a little bit more of like an eerie sound of something like that. We did, to be honest with you, we did everything with the LP that I really wanted to do with it. I don't know that I don't think there's anything. All the ideas I had for the record that I wasn't sure about, they talked me into doing, and we did them, and they worked very well. So, like New York Minute is a prime example. I like wasn't comfortable like doing that vocal style like at all, and now it's what people want from me in some sort of weird way, which I think is kind of funny.
It's cool that you can have that moment though, right? I know the vocal style you're talking about, and it fits that song. Like, I mean, if there's parts of the record that stick out to me, the song you're referencing, oh my god, I'm gonna forget the name of it, with the female vocals, is awesome. Like, it's such a nice, it's not a break necessarily, but it's like it adds another layer to what it is that you're doing. The opening track with the 100 Demons, like the guests that you had on the album, were really complimentary of it. Yeah, man, I'm psyched, and I'm so excited that that style of hardcore is making a return in a big way, because I think like that's the music that we all listened to growing up, and to see it. And now, mind you, I'm a bit of a poser. I missed the last show in Toronto, but my brother got me a Missing Link shirt, so I can tell people I was
That's
there
awesome.
20 years from now. But yeah, it's cool, man. I have a bit of a question for you. I've been racking my head through it a lot lately.
Sure.
And I mean, you're a proud dad. You've talked about your little guy lots on the podcast today, and I love that as a dad myself. And how have you been able to navigate fatherhood while also navigating hardcore, and like the band being where the band is and touring where that is? And I ask because for me, like, it's a weird dichotomy almost. There's moments where I'm with my kid and I'm like, oh man, it'd be really cool to like drive you to daycare and listen to the music that I listen to as soon as you get out of the car. But like, I gotta tidy it up a little bit around my kid. Or like, my wife always talks about like, oh, I really wish that you kept all these shirts so that when your son or your daughter are older, they'll have all this cool gear. And my kids will never know me as like, a hardcore frontman that I was most of my life. How have you kind of like reconciled some of those feelings? How have you navigated some of that?
Yeah, it's hard, especially because nobody expects, I think, their band to even do what we're doing, which, not to say that we're like this huge band, but I'm gone a decent amount right now. Usually just on weekends, because it's like I still gotta, we're definitely not making money like that. So I'm working, I work full time. I own my own barbershop and stuff. And so yeah, the thing for me that's the hardest is just being away, the amount that I am. Um, and that sucks, but I do have this, I have a little bit of an element of like, I think that I realize that to some kids, I am what, my favorite bands were to me growing up. And like it's important, I think, to weigh that as like something that does matter, I think, to a certain extent. Like I think it matters when some kid messages me and is like, your record got me through a really hard time or whatever, or like, that happens a lot. Kind of actually an unfortunate amount, because it's like I'd actually maybe feel a little bit better if people related to the music a little bit less.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
But as far as like my, with my kid, it's like I'm lucky because we're in a good financial situation. My wife is home most of the time, and she really is super supportive and encourages me to do a lot of this stuff. And I run everything past her of like, hey, we got offered this. I know it's in between these two things. Is it cool if I do it?
Mm-hmm.
And she's usually like, at this point, the offers are so good. She's like, you have to do it, like, even like the Tied Down pre-show, we didn't even know what it was. They just offered it to us, and I was just like, yeah, we didn't play Tied Down last year. Like, let's do it. And then it ended up being this crazy show, but, yeah, it is hard for me. I feel guilty, leaving him the amount that I do. And then the other part of me is like, it kind of teaches my kid to like go do what it is that you're setting out to do, and go, especially if you're creating art that I think, without sounding like incredibly pretentious, but creating art that I think at least some group of people thinks is important and meaningful.
Yeah.
There's something to that, I think, and it would suck to have put out a record that I'm really proud of, and that I think is kind of more than just like a record of me being like, I'll just kick your ass, dude, and then just never doing anything with it, like getting like really good like feedback on it and then just being like, well, that's over. And like there's bands that do that, and I think that's awesome too. Like if you just don't want to do anything, that's great. But I love going to play a show, and I'm sitting at the merch table all night. Most times we play, like it'll be me sitting there or one of us, like, but usually me, to like, shake anybody's hand, have any conversation that anybody wants to have, kind of for better or worse sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm still as big of a fan of hardcore as I was before I was doing a band. So I'm still like, we're playing with a band I want to see. We just played with All Out War and Never Ending Game. I was moshing to both bands. Like, I don't give a shit. I'm not that guy that's like gonna be too cool to go and pretend, like, oh, I don't like this shit. No, it's not me. I love it in the same way that I would be excited to do anything that I like,
Yeah.
It doesn't, for me, it's never gotten old. Kind of unfortunately, I think to a certain extent, like there's been, right now it's really good, but there's been stretches of my life where I'm like, why am I still doing this hardcore shit? Like, but I think, I don't know, maybe it's like, to me, hockey ruined every other sport for me, and hardcore ruined every other live show for me.
Yeah.
Even for genres that I love, bands that I love, that energy is not there. That level of intensity is not there. The crowd participation is not there. And it's like that's like what I really was drawn to first about hardcore. Like the harshness of the music didn't really do anything for me. It was really more the people. And so, yeah, I don't know. You probably have this too, where you're like, do I want my kid to be into hardcore? Like, in so many ways, I'm like, I've dealt with some of the best people ever and a lot of the worst people ever. Like, you're gonna get some, but I don't know. In a lot of ways, I think hockey and hardcore are both microcosms for the real world, and it's like you're gonna have that sort of push and pull of like, if this dude disrespects you, it might go a certain way, and you just can't allow that to happen. And I think in the real world now more than ever, people get away with that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a question of like, do you want your kid to be the type of person to let people get away with things?
Right.
Or, there's like,
Yeah.
it turns into this huge, like, at least for me, I'm like a bit of a doom thinker, so to speak, I think at times when it comes to that stuff. But you want to like protect your kid, and I think the best way to do that is to make him strong. Like if you're sending your kid out to play hockey, like my dad would be like, go out there and throw your weight around, be tough. And you get pushed over, some kid punches you or whatever, and he's like, well, next shift go out and slash him.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like, it's a game of give and take, and I think hardcore is very much like that. It's a game of respect, and you have to, I just don't ever want to be that guy that's like, I'm too cool, or I'm too, I don't love this. Like, I do love it. There's things about it that
Yeah.
drive me crazy, but I'm very grateful to be able to get, like, we announced that we're doing a Southeast Asia tour. Like, they're gonna fly me to, tour places I've never dreamed of going to bark into the microphone like an idiot. Like it's that's pretty amazing stuff, and I think people take that for granted in hardcore a lot, that it could bring you to places, like, especially if you're from a background where you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So
I really admire that. Yeah, I mean, there's so many good pieces there that you mentioned, but yeah, it is almost like, the rink is really like an allegory almost for life, right? Like the things that we do. And like, I know Carter and I talk about this all the time. We probably sound like broken records, but the kids that we coach are in college, and we're trying to tell them like, hey, all of this shit, we've done all of this before, right? So like, we can walk you through, like, we may not be able to make you a better player on the ice. Like, by the time we get you, you're more or less a finished product. But like, if I can help instill to you like the power of communication, I'm not going to make it to practice tonight, and I'm going to tell you 2 days in advance, because that's a life skill that you'll be able to take to your job someday. Amazing, right? And so it's yeah, man, it's So interesting. I don't think I ever really thought about it like that. I mean, it was funny when Thomas was like, "Oh yeah, I'm talking to Mike from Missing Link on Twitter. Like, should we get him on the podcast?" I was like, "Fuck yeah, like let's do it." Wasn't sure how the two topics would kind of like coalesce together, and maybe we've jumped around a little bit tonight, but yeah, I mean, what you said was like perfect. Really well said, buddy.
Thank you. Yeah. I think you know, it's funny. Like I think like in hockey, you kind of go back to these like ideas, like whatever the one or two were that like stuck with you. And my dad has always said, and I kind of like really believe this, that like the best hockey player on the ice is always the smartest guy who like can it's less about being fast enough to get there and more about knowing when to get there, you know. And like I that is like a huge allegory for life. Like you don't have to be like the technically best at everything. It's like you got to know when to show up, you got to know how to play it right, you got to know the angles and like all the little. It's more about like the little things and doing little things and kind of like being the hardest worker and grinding yourself to get there if you're not just born with that natural talent. And I mean, how many guys did you grow up with were amazing hockey players that never did anything because they're just like dickheads? Like a lot of those are, there's a lot of kids that I grew up with that went pro. So um yeah, I think that hockey is the main reason I wanted my kid to get into it is because you learn so much through it about life outside of there, and then you get it boxed in a really fun game. It's like as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And there's only a few things I think, like baseball, sorry, it's not doing that for you. It's just not. I love baseball. Don't put it on the TV or I'm going to sleep. But I love it for what it is. But I think that there's a level in hockey that doesn't. Boxing, you're going to learn a lot about the real world in boxing, jujitsu, mixed martial arts, whatever. But a team sport, which is what life really is, kind of in a lot of situations, there's nothing like hockey, even I mean, pro basketball, come on. I don't know if anybody whoever's watching this, pro basketball sucks. I don't care what you say.
We're all on the same page.
They're
We're all on the
jogging.
same
They're
page.
not even running. They're not even trying. Watch college basketball. It's much better.
It's funny though. You can tell, like I think about it almost daily, like in work and school and life and everything. You can tell Jersey guys right away, and it's like whenever a job needs to get done, whoever's there with you until the job is done, they've had a jersey on at some point, right? And it's
Yep.
whenever like you're at your hardest or your lowest or whatever, whoever's on the other end of that phone or the other end of the combo is always a jersey guy. And like it's funny like you're so in it growing up, you don't realize how much it actually left with you for the rest of your life, right? Like, and it's not just the big meathead like, oh, I'm gonna fuck with you, touch my goalie, but like other things, right? Like it really like instills a work ethic, like and like a mindset, like you said, like you're very critical on yourself. You don't want to quit. You want to be the best all the time, right? But that's not necessarily being the most skilled. Like you want to be the best with your skill set and showing up when you want. So it's yeah, it's nice to like just hear it from someone who I've never met before, different part of the world, different walk of life. Like that's like a universal truth with hockey, and it's nice to it's cool to see it like that's the game, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think too, it's funny that you mentioned that like the hockey bro is kind of going away a little bit. Because I always felt like the hockey bros like didn't get that.
Yeah.
Which is like weird that I think you could play it and play it all the time and not have that level of like understanding of like at least as you get older of like what this means like to like be on a team and be a part of something that where you're striving for something. And it is kind of funny to look back now at so many of those guys. They're just like drunk losers in a bar. Like, not to even like talk shit about a lot of them, but it is kind of like it is missed by some people who are, who do play the game and maybe who even love it, but for whatever reason, some of those things just didn't click with them. And maybe they didn't, and it always seemed to be a guy that like didn't really care about the team aspect of it. And like when
Yeah.
you're a little kid, you don't, you grow into that, I think. But sort of like making sacrifices for the team, knowing you're not the best player for this situation or to go out right now, or you got to learn how to win, you got to learn how to lose. And it's like, all that stuff is why I want my kid to play hockey, and hopefully he likes it enough to continue playing, because it's all of those things are like super important for life, and you could almost fast track doing some other stuff where, like, how do you learn that if you don't play a team sport? Like, I don't
I don't know
got
how.
lucky. I don't know. Like, shout out to my dad who, took an infinite amount of time to like coach my teams and did anything he could to get me to where I got to go and play hockey and play baseball and, whatever. But it was, I think that I didn't have money growing up, but I had that, and that is like so much more important. And I think that a lot of times people who have that take it for granted, and, or they want to pretend that they didn't have that for some reason. That's like an interesting one sometimes I see. But it's like, I'm super grateful, to have had that, and especially in the correlation of hockey in particular, that kind of with the, stoic hockey dad, and hockey itself, put me in I think a mental state that works well for navigating shitty situations. So
Definitely. And it's also like what you're like, why are you there? Right. I mean, I think the thing that draws me back to both hardcore and hockey for me is the community, right? Like if I'm getting one from one, I'm probably getting it from the other. And the things that I've learned in one, I can apply to the other. Right. And yeah, I just, it's really exciting, man, that the time that you do have, you're spending that growing, this love that you obviously have for the game, and hoping that your son takes a liking to it. I know, like my oldest son, he turned 3 yesterday. Got birthday cake all over the kitchen counter here that I got to put away when we're done. So I'm prolonging the end here, but it's funny, even just when they realize that you love something, right? So he sees like the Maple Leaf logo in the house and recognizes that as something that I like. So it's probably something that he's going to like. So is that to say that your son's a Flyers fan, or is he?
Oh yeah. Well, he doesn't have a choice.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's funny. He who was it recently? We were watching a game, and like, cause I'll just put a game on. He can't. 5-year-olds can't pay attention to hockey, like on TV. It's too you don't know the rules. It's too fast, and they're just in La La Land, doing other stuff, building Legos or whatever. But it was like some other team, and he was like, "I think I'm rooting for them." I was like, "It might have been Boston. It might have been Boston."
Yeah.
I was
Oh no!
you can root for almost anyone.
Yeah. You want to bet? You want to bet tonight?
But not them.
Yeah.
No, but like he even with like football, like we're a Bills household, and he'll pick a team in a random game, just like, I'm rooting for them. So like he doesn't have any like real allegiance yet. But, and like I said, even me, I'm a Flyers fan, but I just love hockey. So I'll watch any game, and I, as a kid, I always I had a West Coast team, like the Kings were my West Coast team, based solely on the fact that Ziggy Palfy played for them, and I just thought that was a cool name. I'm not kidding at all. That was like that was the reason. But yeah, he'll be a Flyers fan.
I'll just wish that he's never a Bruins Cowboys fan, and then we'll
There's no possible way. Honestly, I feel like you guys probably feel this way too, but there's like teams where I'm like, that's respectable. Like, I'm not gonna, if you love hockey, if somebody's like, yeah, I'm a Canadians fan, I'm like, I get it, dude. It's like, or Detroit, whatever. But if somebody's like, I don't know, some of these teams,
Oilers.
I'm a Tampa Bay Lightning fan.
Yeah, fuck you. What?
Why do they have hockey there? What are we talking about?
Oh, that's so funny.
But
I know I hopped on a call the other day, and like this guy I never met before on a Zoom call at work, and he had a Cowboys shirt on, and it just came out. I'm like, oh, who's this guy? And I was like, It just came
awesome.
out like
I do
my
have
hate
a
for the Cowboy.
my coworker is like new into hockey, like he never cared about it at all, but his brother moved to Seattle,
Okay.
and
Oh yeah.
and so he was like, "Hey man, um I'm gonna go to the Winter Classic. Like, is that cool?" Like he had no idea. And I was like, dude, go buy a jersey and become a Kraken fan. Like they're new.
Mm-hmm.
Your brother lives there. Like you have a reason to pick them. No one's gonna call you a front runner. Like it's like
Yeah.
it's a brand new thing.
Yeah.
And he did, and he's like into it now, which is awesome.
That's
And I
sick.
was telling him like, dude, there's a rumor that the Kraken are gonna get Capo Caco. I think he's gonna be awesome for them or whatever. And then sure enough,
Sure
and
enough.
so then he
Yeah.
went and bought one of his jerseys, which I think is sometimes every once in a while, like there's just a hockey player with an awesome name, and like that's one of them. I'm like, that's
Oh
just
yeah.
like, dude, Radek Bonk is like the
Yeah.
Sick.
coolest. It's the
Great
coolest
name.
name of all time. Like I want to buy a Radek Bonk jersey. I don't even know if there's any out there anymore, but
Chris and I had a goalie with the last name Bonk one of our
We
coaching
did.
years.
it's
He's a
awesome.
psychopath. Yeah,
He
unreal
slew
kid.
foot me at practice one day, and I had a concussion for like 6 months. That was
Got
sick.
bonked. You've been
Good time.
bonked.
I was
You've
bonked
been
straight
bonked.
up. He, it's funny. We were talking about like players that like might be more like apt into getting into the stuff that we're into. And Carter will keep me honest here, but I remember one time we're sitting on the bus listening to music, and he's got these big headphones on. And I walk over and I'm like, "Hey, Bonkers, like, what are you listening to?" He's like, "Disturbed." I'm like, "Oh, cool, man. Yeah, I love Disturbed. Like when I was growing up, like, what's your favorite song?" Like trying to like click with him a little bit because goalies are notoriously
Yeah, he's a
little bit
weirdo.
off.
Yeah.
And I just remember him. What's the first album that I think Stupefy is the opening song? I can't remember. I think it's literally the first album they have. Anyway, so he's like trying to tell me a little bit about it. I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll be back in a quick second." And I came back, and the kid, his mom, instead of like eating when we were traveling, his mom would make him a tray of lasagna, and he was sitting with the lasagna on his lap, just eating it with like a wooden ladle. And he's like, "Coach, do you want some?" And I was like, "Nah, man, you're in the zone." He was also the same guy that during a flood at one of our tournaments, he asked Carter and I to go buy him smokes because he was so stressed. So goalies
Mike,
are fun.
That's awesome.
this kid showed
So
up. We had an open house for like the hockey program, and he showed up. He's got these like big baggy pants on, sandals, no socks, like a shirt with a tie tucked in, like a big leather like sport coat and like a
Yeah, he's
cowboy
a
hat
goalie.
type thing.
You
Yeah,
are
and
so strange.
he came up and he was like, "Hey, is this hockey?" And we're like, "No, this is the gym, buddy." Like we had no idea what to say. Like we were like, yeah. He's like, "Yeah, I'm a goalie. I want to try out." We're like, "Holy shit!"
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And so he ended up being the everyone loved him. Like he would walk through the campus, and all the girls would be like, "Hi, Riley," and we'd be like, "Oh, Bonker's another girlfriend." He's like, "Don't start that rumor again."
He
He
was
was
so
the
funny.
biggest legend.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Bonk.
His mom would come to every game and would hold the iPad up in the stands, like trying to like zoom in on like
What?
him. Dude, it was
That's
great.
awesome.
It was great.
Yeah.
And honestly, man, I know you might not have the time for it right now with everything the band's got going on and the business and everything, but I got to tell you, man, like coaching has been one of like the great loves of my life that I fell in love with, we've been doing it for about 10 years now, Carter and I, and it's a great way to give back. And this is even before my kids were born. Like I can't wait to coach my son and daughter, hoping that they love it as much as I do, but you've got the passion, man. I could see you
I
just
want to
ripping
do
that
it.
up.
I do. I like whenever this band inevitably implodes, I will probably take it up. I did. Even with baseball this past summer, they were like, if you can't commit to everything, you can't coach, And I was like, okay. And then like, I was there more than the coaches were, which is insane. Like I was in Europe for 3 weeks there, but so I ended up helping out a ton,
Yeah.
which is cool. Like I want to do it. And even with these guys, I want to be like, hey man, come on. What's the worst that happens when I show up is you have an extra an extra adult on the ice to like help out.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just, things have kind of changed as far as like you can't just go help out anymore. You know, it used to be like, yeah, this guy's dad played, like, oh, my dad played with him. All right, cool. Bring him on the ice, see what he wants to do, whatever. This guy runs the box tonight, whatever, you know. Now it's like I don't know these people. I didn't grow up here, you know. So it's just the guy with face tattoos showing up to be like, "Hey man, can I come out on the ice and help out?" Like, so I don't really know what the vibe is. Like it's not that they're not cool. They've all been super cool. And like one of the guys who's coaching, like he's in just like beginners.
Yeah.
He also coaches like a high school team, and he played with have you guys ever heard of Robbie Schremp?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I trained when I was a kid. Robbie would train me when I played for Syracuse.
Oh, sweet.
And this dude played with him, so it's like I had a little bit of a connection to him.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, they're but I don't know if they're gonna just like let me waltz out on the ice. And actually, I could show you. I pulled these inside. This is the greatest skate ever made. Just so everyone's clear. That's the toe.
Oh,
How's
fuck
that look?
yeah. The
Oh,
652s.
so good.
The
I will not
So
replace these
652.
skates. They've been riveted multiple times, as you can
Yeah,
tell.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're both like that, by the way. Like they're just shredded.
Just shredded. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
a real grinder, boys. I'm in the
I was
corner.
gonna say those are corner bites, buddy. Those are corner bites. They don't make skates with the scars anymore.
I probably had those. I think I got those when I was like 16 or 17. Whenever my feet stopped growing, and I wear a 13, so thank God they didn't grow anymore.
Yeah,
Oh
the
my
652s are certified big boy skates. Those
Dude,
were
that I'm not kidding. Like, because I could just buy new skates, but I had pairs after that, and I like hated them. Like,
yeah.
like objectively better skates that I just was like, nah, like.
Yeah.
And I remember when I got those, my dad was like, they put so much padding in them now. Like, I don't like to skate with all that padding. And then like after those, I got like a pair of Graphs, and I was like, what? This is like a pillow on my foot. Like, I hate this.
Mhm.
I can't feel anything. And a guy that I cut at the barbershop told me that they brought back, like they're like making like tacks again, like in like that
Oh,
kind
have
of
you
look like
seen
that,
them?
but they're like
Have you seen
angled.
them?
He said. So
Yeah.
I saw a
Oh.
picture of one, but I thought it was fake. To be honest, like
No, they'll feel like shit. Like they'll like
Yeah.
you won't like the feel of them, but they're the old Tax 652. Like they're all carbon. They're insane.
it's the best skate
But
ever, man. Why would I change
yeah,
it at this point? Like
if
my
it ain't
wife's like,
broke,
if you start playing in a men's league, you got to get a new pair of skates. I was like, what? Then they won't know how cool I am.
yeah. Also, that though you're one of the old dogs now. You know you're in trouble
Yeah.
if they
Oh,
show
yeah.
up with that gear. You're
Oh,
like,
dude.
okay,
My stuff, I got like, because when I played for Syracuse, they pretty much brought me out to play because at the time they needed like a goon, but I also could actually play. So
Yeah.
it was like like go kill this guy, and also like we need to score type of deal. But I played defense for them, and I had like they made the elbow pads were like the plastic mold on the outside, and like
yeah,
I just bought anything that would make my setup like more insane. I was like, that's what I want. Like because
yeah.
I'm gonna be elbowing people. Like
You had the big
I love it.
flak, like the outside plastic, like shoulder pads. The
I didn't have those. I played with a kid who did. I'm pretty sure they were just football pads.
yeah, they look like it.
Yeah, I didn't have those because I felt like you couldn't really move in them
No,
that well, and it was like, yeah, I don't know. I did have like regular shoulder pads, but elbow pads were those. I still have them, but they're like you guys have probably seen them. But I remember when I saw them the first time, I was
yeah,
like, I almost think
yeah.
CCM made those too.
Are are they the? I had the exact same ones, the Jofas. They're white with the navy elbow, and they're like the big pointy plastic
Yeah,
elbow
so
on the end.
mine
And
are
it was
black and orange. But yeah,
yeah,
it must have been Jofa. Like my kid wears my first pair of skates, Tax 52s. My
nice.
dad kept them all these years. My first pair of
So
thick
cool.
pants, he wears them.
Yeah.
My dad has kept literally everything, like stuff that when I went to get the stuff for my son from his house, I pulled out a bag of my stuff. I was like, some of this stuff's like brand new. Like I could wear
Yeah.
this. So
Yeah,
that was kind of cool. But yeah, the skates they're holding up ish. I don't know. They're looking a
The-
little sad.
put
I
them
feel
on the
like they
fireplace.
Yeah.
The gear was also just made so much better back then too. I feel like I sound like an old guy, but I don't know. You just the craftsmanship, like the fact that you can have skates that are that old that are still absolutely functional with a couple of war wounds on it is crazy. That just doesn't exist these days, right?
So this one, I could have this repaired. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but you can see how the plastic is actually gone from in under the boot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because it
Yeah.
cracked and it was like hanging, and I just said fuck it and tore it off. But I mean, like, the big thing with these was multiple times the rivets just like came out, like they were like hanging out, and I had to get them. Shout out again to Joe Sanderson. He had them re-riveted for me because I just like refused to get new skate. I was just like, why? I love these ones. I don't want new ones, and I don't know. It's weird. It's like the one thing that I always loved was like I was never like a brand guy. I just like whatever I liked at that moment I liked, but Tacks were like the skates that I hated everything else I ever put on.
Yeah.
Bowers hated them, Nikes hated them, Graphs really hated those.
So did everyone.
Yeah.
I love
That's
that.
sick.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, I feel like we've taken up a lot of your time tonight, Mike.
Oh, you guys are great, man.
This has been great. I mean, like I said, wasn't sure how we'd be able to keep everything together, but it's like that internet meme where it's like guys can just sit around and talk about a player from '98 and just talk for 2 hours.
That's why we're awesome, man.
I mean, we could do that more too.
That's why if people like if like all the politicians in the world could just do that, we'd be in a good spot,
Oh my God.
But they don't know what it's like to love Joe Sakic the way I love Joe Sakic. And if they did, we'd be in a better spot.
I love it. We were going to do one last thing with you if we have time. We just want to give you the opportunity to do a New York minute where you can talk shit on the Islanders and the Rangers if you want.
Well, so
oh, and the Sabres, obviously.
all right. So here's the thing. I respect the Rangers and the Islanders. I really do.
Okay.
We're rivals, but you got to respect your rivals. And there's been times that I love watching both of them play, and I love watching the Flyers play them. I clench my butt cheeks every time Todd Barzell touches the puck. Like, The Sabres, though, suck butt. They always fucking have. They always will. Get the Pagulas out of there. I'm sorry to all my friends who are Sabres fans. I talk about it all the time. I want them to win for my friends because I live in Western New York. I would love for them to do well. They got to get rid of the Pagulas. They got to sell the team to they got to do what the Penguins did when Lemieux bought it. Like it's got to go to someone who knows what the hell they're doing, that loves hockey and loves the city. But nobody loves the city of Buffalo. No, I'm kidding. But bring in somebody that, even like the Flyers bringing in Danny Briere to run the show. Like they need that so bad. And they don't know what the hell they're doing. Flyers are guilty of it. Islanders are guilty of it. But if you're always rebuilding, like if you come on, the Eichel shit, there's a guy I used to work with that still owes me $500 because he bet me $500 they'd be in the playoffs within 2 years of them drafting that motherfucker. And I'm like, dude, you clearly don't know how hockey works, but okay. But yeah, I feel bad for Buffalo, but they suck ass. They haven't been good in forever. I don't think they'll be good for a very long time. I could rant about them all day. I do all the time at the barbershop. The guys come in and I feel bad for them because it's like, just as hockey guys, think about how crazy it is to basically like Ryan O'Reilly's going to retire because he'd rather retire than play for your team.
Oh, crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
Like not only he didn't want to play at all. He was done. I'm over hockey. I don't think it's for me. Gets traded, wins the Stanley Cup, and wins MVP. It shows how bad something is with their organization. Something about the culture there is so off that they're never going to do well. Like you can't convince me that they're just going to draft some all-star. If they would have drafted so many guys say if we would have drafted McDavid, we would have been no, dude. You wouldn't
no
have. You would have done the
chance.
same shit. You would have brought in some old guys. You would have tried for 2 years, and then when it failed, inevitably you would have sold everybody off like you always do. And it's like they're cursed because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. It's a shit show. Fuck the Sabres. Respect to the goat head.
Always respect to the goat.
But
that's the only thing they have going for them.
I want them to be good. Like I, it's like, and the Bills are good right now. So you'd think they'd be able to build something there that would around that. Like you could have an amazing sports city, and you're in a place that gets more snow than anyone. So what are you doing? Like the Pagulas should know enough that they don't know shit about hockey, and they should sell that team to somebody who cares and that played and that knows what they're doing. And like, dude, come on, bringing back Lindy Ruff. We're gonna be, it's gonna be like when Mike Pekka was here. Wrong.
Yeah, but that's no, and I don't disagree with you. I think it's funny because we talked earlier about like that kind of like that blue collar like essence, and I mean we live about how far are we from Buffalo? Like 2 hours.
Well,
maybe?
I'm like 45 minutes.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
just
you're
over
like right there.
Hamilton. Yeah.
So, and I mean, like, here's the thing. I love the idea of the Buffalo Sabres. I love the idea of the fans, like the grit. And I mean, when we were kids, they were good. Like they were a good team when we were growing up. And then now it's just like, all right, I guess I'm just going to listen to Matthew Barnaby, like ramble incoherently about like Rasmus Dahlin being like, a top player. And, your point about McDavid is so funny because they've literally drafted all of these players and like culturally there's just something wrong there, right? Like I think of when Owen Power got drafted first overall, or when they drafted Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen as like their savior goalie, like, oh, he's gonna be like Hasek level good, and it's like, nah, he ain't. Like you can't make it work. And Rochester has like kind of always had a pretty good AHL team. Like you'd think that would kind of get things moving. And
well, isn't the rule of thumb if the AHL team's good, the NHL team sucks?
Yeah, for sure. But I also kind of feel like they, Thomas, like help me put this sentence together. But they basically like they have so many like drafted pieces that you almost can't give a guy that would otherwise be a top 6 role on a team because there's already 6 other guys that were drafted a year earlier or whatever.
Oh yeah,
now you've got all these like pieces that are not growing because a top 6 guy can't play a bottom 6 like grinding role. That's not what his skill is. Like that's not why he was drafted 34th overall or whatever, right?
I think so often the mistake that GMs or whoever's running the show, owners, whatever, so many teams make the mistake of we're going to draft a guy number 1 overall and he's going to save our team and we're going to be amazing. And then it's like, if you look back at definitely me, but I'm sure a lot of guys, their favorite players ever, maybe like a couple of them are like a first overall draft pick. It's like, guys get drafted like number 349 and then they come into the league and score 50 goals. And then how many guys are drafted 1, 2, 3 through 10 and they don't do anything? Hockey is not an individual sport. It's why Ovechkin didn't just come into the league and win 50 Stanley Cups in a row. You cannot do it. It's not possible. And they keep convincing themselves if we just draft the same players over and over again, we're gonna have a better team tomorrow. And and then they sell off the veterans that they really need to make the team strong and good and give the young guys something to believe in. They're shot. The Sabres suck. Sell the team. Fucking move them to fucking Fort Worth, Texas. I don't know. To not be able to put together a good hockey team in Buffalo, New York is absurd. It makes no sense. I mean, I could talk about it forever, but like to, have like Vegas and like all these other like markets. Some of these markets don't make any sense. Vegas makes sense. Obviously, it's like a tourist destination, but to have teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning be consistently good over years, why can they do it and Buffalo can't do it? What is it about some of these teams where they're that, and it has to be ownership? Because at a certain point, everyone else is gone, right? Like, you've burned dozens or hundreds of careers in the process, and they don't give a shit because they're all rich people. But, and it's the same with football to a certain extent, like another high intensity team sport where you see the same thing over and over again. But with hockey, there's like, I feel like there's more of a lineage that you could follow where it's like, this is the blueprint to make a team good. You draft the right guys and you just fucking wait. And you can't sell off everybody in 2 years. That's like what everybody wants to do. Oh, we're going to draft, Eichel, and then in 2 years, we're going to be in the playoffs. We're going to win a Stanley Cup. Dude, he's one guy. Like, this is not how this works. And you see the smartest, McKinnon staying with Colorado, taking that pay cut, and like so many guys were mad. Like I remember listening
he's
to
our
some
guy.
hockey podcasts, and guys were pissed. This makes everybody look bad. This, we're all gonna lose money, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, you know what? I want to stay with my team where I know we're good and we're gonna win a Stanley Cup. And like to me, I get both sides. Everybody wants to make money, whatever. But it's like this is a guy sacrificing for the team. That's what hockey is about. Like, and he did it on the biggest scale, like millions of dollars. He just could have went and got paid millions to fucking twiddle his thumbs with Long Island or or something like that, and didn't. So I don't know. It's a goofy setup.
You know what it is? It's the this is going to be a deep hockey cut, but Buffalo's bad because the 1999 EA Sports NHL cover was Eric Lindros, and then the next year when you bought EA NHL 2000, the home team was defaulted to the Buffalo Sabres, and so it's a curse. The ghost of Eric Lindros cursing the Buffalo Sabres.
There it is.
The ghost of Lindros past. Yeah, it's actually me. Like I'm the connecting piece. Somehow, like I was, I'm like
you're the missing link.
Yeah. All I've got to do is sacrifice Darius Kasparaitis to the gods, and Buffalo will be set free.
That I think, like that in the first 10 minutes of our conversation, you being like, "Yeah, I might have killed Darius Kasparaitis." That was that. I think the real hockey fans are gonna love. They're gonna love that clip.
Or somebody on Twitter is gonna be like, "The guy from Missing Link is talking about killing people." And
go to our hardcore.
Kill him too.
Yeah. If you knew the guy like we know the guy, trust me, you'd feel the same way.
Really quick before I feel like I'm wasting a lot of your guys' time.
No,
I was living in Pittsburgh for years as a Flyers fan, wearing Flyers gear all the time, and my girlfriend at the time was a Penguins fan, but we made it work, and we obviously broke up, so I guess not really, but we're still friends. So, but one year for Christmas, she got me tickets to a Flyers Penguins game in Pittsburgh, and it was front row. I'm decked out. I mean, Flyer socks on head to toe. And the game goes into overtime 5-5, and Flyers score a minute in. And I stand up and I'm like, yeah. And I look around and it's dead silent. I'm the only the other side of the rink, there was 5 college bros that were Flyers fans. And everybody's staring at me, and I'm like, all right, time to go. We won. Let's get the hell out of here. And I remember thinking, if this was in Philadelphia and the roles were flipped, they probably would have beat my ass for this.
Yeah, straight up. Is the rival Leafs fan, Carter's a Habs fan. We actually, you'll probably get a kick out of this, Mike. Carter and I went to school together, and then we kind of lost touch. And I'm at the Bell Center with my now wife, then girlfriend, and I was going to propose to her that night. And so I've been fiddling around watching this game. I have the engagement ring in my pocket the whole night. I'm kind of freaking out. And of course, I'm in Quebec. I don't know anybody there. I had some friends that weren't at the game kind of thing, but a couple people knew. And I actually run into Carter in the concourse, while we're waiting for our people to use the bathroom. My wife was in the bathroom and Carter was with some family. And I'm basically just buddy, I'm fucking losing it. I got to propose to my wife. I was going to propose at the game. And then maybe Carter like talked me off a bridge and was like, don't do that. That's maybe not the move here, buddy. And then, yeah, we got this like very famous photo of him and I at a game, like reconnecting. And then we've been kind of like super, super tight ever since. So it's just funny how.
So instead of proposing to your wife, you propose to Carter.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Yeah, that's sometimes the way these things go. But
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, pretty magical moment. Now you've shit talked the Sabres, but let's get it. No, I'm just joking. We're not going to go down the Islanders path. But I mean,
Victor, the original bass player for Missing Link, who kind of pieced us all together.
Yeah,
he's like a diehard Islanders. I mean, the band is from Long Island. Everyone besides me and Paul lives in Western Mass, but all the rest of the guys are from Long Island. But I'm like, I don't know. To me, it's like, if the Flyers lose, like if I'm watching a game and they lose, I just go, all right, and I just get up and move on with my life. Like, there's other shit going on. I don't get like mad. I don't know about a team I'm not on losing. Like I'm not on the team. They don't even know me.
Yeah.
Some people obviously get super mad. I've just never been that guy. But I can't really. There's teams I could talk shit about. The Islanders, I don't know. I respect them. I respect a losing team. If you lose forever. The Penguins, not as much respect there.
They've just been gifted everything.
Fuck them. Yeah, really, for me, the Penguins, even Boston, it's like you have to respect them.
Yeah, original six too, obviously.
But Marchand, come on. Now I see that they're talking about trading him.
Oh yeah.
Where do you think he's going to go?
We talked about this last week. We didn't talk about Marchand, but like
I think Marchand in Colorado.
Colorado, so good. Yeah,
he
scoring depth.
No. The problem is, you kind of can't trade him anywhere in the Northeast because everyone hates him. Like, how's he going to the locker room? Like, sorry guys for the last, however many years of being a total absolute piece of dog shit human.
But is it like
I don't know about him outside of the game.
No, but like, is it like one of those things with the guy that tried to fight you at that game where he's like, it all stays on the ice, brother? Like, is it one of those kind of?
I don't know.
So maybe.
Like, I'm one of these guys where I'm like, certain characters annoy me. Obviously, everybody is annoyed by Brad Marchand on the ice. Like, he just does shit that I'm like, really, dude,
Yeah.
Off the ice, probably a great guy for all I know. I have no idea. So I don't really want to talk shit about him, like, personally. But I do think if I was, let's say, playing for the Flyers and they traded him to the Flyers, I'd be like, so there's going to be some center matches going down in that locker room before he gets the respect of the guys in that room. You're going to have to go out and shed some blood for this team now. Like, now Crosby's a guy I don't respect on or off the ice.
Oh, I love that. That's spicy.
I actually don't know him off the ice at all. But no, you guys probably remember he tried to fight Giroux, like the smallest guy in the world.
Oh yeah.
And then when Giroux dropped him, he pulled him to the ice and skated away like a little sissy.
Yeah.
And now I can't respect them because it's like, dude, you picked the guy that you thought wouldn't fight you, and when he was down to fight, like, these guys don't fight. Claude Giroux should not be fighting. And when he was down to do it for the team, you reffed your way out of it. And
I mean, do you remember what year would it have been when they were doing the NHL like 24/7, where you were seeing like the background of like everything that was going on leading up to the Winter Classic.
Oh, yeah.
And there was the year with Penguins and Philly, right? I think they
it was Rangers and Philly, right?
Oh, Rangers and Philly. I'm getting it confused. But I mean, just there's always been some like kind of polarizing guys there. Was it tough when Giroux left? Like, is he like running into like seeing an ex and you're just like, I hope they're doing well. I'm doing good, but like,
I love, man, the Flyers in a lot of ways, much like Buffalo, fumbled the bag with a lot in a worse way actually than Buffalo did, because Buffalo didn't have the players. Flyers had players for a long time. Fumbling Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek, trading Wayne Simmons for nothing. They did a lot of really heinous trading Scott Hartnell for nothing. Like, they had guys that I really believe they could have grinded out at least close to a cup with.
Yeah.
Now that said, once they started getting rid of guys for nothing, they should have gotten rid of Drew probably sooner. They
Yeah.
probably should have gotten rid of Voracek sooner if you're gonna rebuild. And it was like they were pretending they weren't gonna, but it's like, come on, you know you're not winning a Stanley Cup at this point. Giroux, I think they misused. I think they thought he was going to be a better goal scorer than he was. I think he's a better playmaker, and he proved that kind of time and time again. They should have put him on lines with maybe guys they didn't have, maybe guys that were more of like a crazy finesse player. Because you see Giroux and he's small, and I think maybe that's what the role was supposed to be. But he's such a good passer. It's almost like, I don't know, but love Claude Giroux. Love that he got arrested for slapping a cop's ass.
famously.
Love him. I love that era of the Flyers. I actually think was pretty special. Like they had a really good core team for like a long time, and even some of the guys that they were like fourth liners for them, they traded for nothing and have gone and done really good things. So something, and it might have been the GM at the time was Ron Hextall, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah,
like the
Would
mid
have been
2010s
Hexy.
kind of thing. Yeah.
You mean that guy is who you're gonna have running the show? Like he's crazy. He's a crazy person. And then he went and did it with the Islanders too.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The Flyers, as my grandfather would say, need a nurse. In a similar fashion, I think culturally there's something wrong with the Flyers goaltending staff. I don't know what that's about, but since I've been a kid, they've had amazing goaltenders who play like dog shit when they're on the Flyers, and they get traded to Stanley Cups and Vezina
That's true.
trophies, and how? Why is Ilya Brazgalov the worst goalie on earth in a fucking Flyers uniform, and then he gets traded and he's like the best goalie ever for a couple seasons?
Or even like Bobrovsky too, right?
Yeah.
Dude.
Even the younger guys like Alex Lyon, he's in Detroit now, just being fine. Like this random guy, Anthony Stolarz, Leafs guy.
Stolarz was horrible on the Flyers. Like they would start him, and I'd be like, well, I'm not even going to watch this game. And it's like, no disrespect to him. There's something about what's going on.
Calvin Pickard, another one. Oilers backup.
Dude,
he's in Philly.
Even going back to like Brian Boucher, like going back, like there's been, and they picked up guys like that. You're like, this guy's going to be solid, and then I don't know. It seems to be. I don't know. I need to like look who their goaltending staff. What if it's been the same like since I was like a kid? It could be like, they're like, goaltending's great, But I have hope. It feels like they might have a couple guys that are going to be. They clearly see there's an issue because they drafted a lot of goalies.
Yeah.
I have hope for Fedotov, if that's how you say it.
Yeah.
He's huge. If you just like teach him how to play in the NHL, like, and the angles and coming out of the net and whatever, like, dude, goaltending's easy. What are these guys even doing? Like, how hard could it be to get hit by the puck? I got hit by it all the time on accident.
Yeah. Straight up.
Just stop the puck. It's easy.
I feel like the most envious I've ever been of the Flyers was when Mike Richards was the captain and awesome Jeff Carter. Like, again, I loved both. But so what I'm trying to say is that like they were getting rid of guys like that were the guys. Like the King. I know you mentioned you like the Kings growing up. The Kings don't win a Stanley Cup without either of those two guys. They don't win several Stanley Cups without those. They
literally twice in a row. 2 cups that they won were like completely Flyers teams. Like they traded like everybody to the King. Like certain teams do a lot of business together. It seems.
Yeah.
They do a lot of business together. Flyers traded like all of their best players to them like multiple times, and they won cups there. Now, I believe at least one of those teams had like Kopitar and some other really key guys that the Flyers just weren't going to get. Like that dude is an incredible, underrated hockey player. That is like a big time role player that you just don't see. At least maybe it's because we live on the East Coast. You just don't hear him talked about that often, I feel like, or at least when he was in his prime. And So they definitely, yeah, the Flyers love to give the LA Kings Stanley Cups. Dude, I think if Flyers win I don't know what I would do if the Flyers win it. I would lose my fucking mind. But it just doesn't even feel attainable, so I don't even care. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know, that'll never fucking happen. But even
there's hope. There's
even
a
when they
little bit of
went with
hope.
like Briere and they almost won, I was like, there's
Yeah.
no fucking way they're gonna beat the Blackhawks right now. Like the
Well,
Blackhawks are unreal right now.
The 2010, we were talking about a team, how it's like so much of a team. It came down to like their bottom pairing defenseman. Like if it was anyone else, not like AHL level guys, then they would have won the cup easily.
That I don't know.
I think that's a good, yeah.
I don't know if it was that year or the year after, but a kid that I played with won that Stanley Cup with Chicago.
Oh, no kidding.
I think it was. No, it was right in that era. I don't think it was that one, but it was one in that area. In that era, where
2013 one,
maybe. Because I think whatever the year was that Shaw took a slap shot to the face and was out. And they put a kid I grew up with, Jeremy Morin, on first line with fucking Taves and Patty Kane. And I'm like, this motherfucker, dude. And he actually scored. I think he scored a couple goals. And people are, you know, kids in my hometown are like, dude, you're scoring goals in the Stanley Cup. Like, you're on, you know. I'm like, well, if you put me out there with those two, I'd probably score a couple goals. Like, you know, he was a great hockey player, but yeah, that was kind of crazy to see, like, you know, a kid I grew up with win a Stanley Cup.
And didn't he? I think he got traded to Toronto later in his career, or he played for the Marlies. Maybe the name sounds familiar.
Played for the Marlies.
Yeah.
You know, he
played for the Marlies.
He kind of got the thing that doomed him was he got drafted by the Thrashers, and then they folded.
Oh, okay.
Then he got picked up. I think he got moved a couple times. I don't know why. You know, it's weird, but it's like one of those things where like. I lost touch with him after, you know, we were like 16 maybe. His dad like moved him to Canada to just do like pro clinics. Like his dad was like, oh, you're going to be a pro hockey player type deal. And he was huge for our age and tough and mean and was fat. Like he had everything to be a pro hockey player.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it was that ever like kept him out of being, because by every metric, he was an NHL player and scoring goals in Stanley Cup playoffs is huge to me. At least for me, it's if you could show up and do it when it counts. But Chicago obviously didn't like something about what they were seeing, or maybe they just had so much depth at that time. Like so much about hockey is timing, you know, like are you on the team at the right moment? Like, and then if not, are they going to trade you and let you do something on a team, or, you know, or who knows? Like hockey's a mystical sport in that way. I think sometimes, like I said, guys drafted like 600 or not drafted at all, like just step on the ice and everything clicks with the right guys, and that's what it's really about, I think. So
he had a cool path too, because I'm just looking at his elite prospects here, but he had come over to play in Canada, like junior hockey, when that like wasn't super common for American kids to come over and play. So
yeah,
it's an interesting path. That's for sure.
I'm telling you, man, his don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure what happened was his dad like divorced his mom and moved him to Canada to like make him be a pro hockey player. Not make him, but like, this is the dream, we're gonna chase it. And I don't know what their like interpersonal thing was, but he's from my hometown. Like we grew up in Auburn together. We played on the same teams growing up. He's actually a year older than I am, I believe, or maybe like half a year older than I am. So kind of like every other year we would play together, but we played in Syracuse together. So I was almost like kind of chasing him a lot of the time, because he had been everywhere he was going. I was doing it 6 months or a year later, you know?
There you go.
But yeah, man, a lot of kids that Cole Bardreau is a kid I grew up with in Auburn, went pro, played for the Islanders, played for the Flyers. A lot of kids I grew up with actually went pro, like from my little tiny hometown in the middle of nowhere, upstate New York, you know, shithole. So it's kind of cool. Like I get a weird sense of pride from that. Like, you know, we got some guys making it to the big show. So
we had a couple of guys like that. Matt Bolesky went to high school with Carter and I. That's really it. That's our claim to fame.
Garrett Wilson played in grade 9. Matt Bolesky was an overager on our high school team. Played 3A with Garrett Wilson. Played ETAs against like Stamkos, Delzato, Hutch. All those boys are all
Yeah.
I think the year that there's grade 10, no, grade 9, 3A hockey, playing against Stamkos, the Markham Waxers, and I think he scored something like 256 points in 60 games that year. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
whenever we had to play Markham, we're just like, well, fuck this. Like,
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always just like some freak who's like too good for
Yeah.
like what are you doing, you know?
Oh god.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't.
And now he's scoring on his own net, so everything comes full circle. What are you gonna do?
There you go.
What are you gonna
Yeah, I think that's a good point to stop on. Carter's this whole time we didn't even mention Carter's in England, so it's 3:30 in the morning.
shit.
over there.
Yeah.
So,
Damn,
He's
dude.
crushing it.
I feel sorry
He's
for the
living
food
life.
you're having to eat right now.
Oh, it's dog shit.
Dude,
Dog
I
shit here.
yeah.
get a lot of British clients in my shop because it's a big college town and kids come from all over, and I'm always just like, man, that food is really pretty bad, huh? The Indian food's great, but everything else is like just gray sludge. Like, what are you fucking doing? Like,
Yeah,
it's
I'm turning gray.
2025, dude. You could get shit shipped to your house from places, you know, that's way better.
Carter, I thought that you going to England would be the end of your veganism journey, but I'm just so proud that you're still holding true, brother.
Yeah,
They got a
I
lot
had
of
a
vegan stuff over there, depending on where you're at, right? Are you in
yeah.
London or
No, I'm just 2 hours north, so I had a double McPlant for dinner at 1 a.m.
Northampton?
Hey,
No, I'm in Leicester. It's where the
Okay.
yeah, it's just some shithole up north.
Yeah.
Yeah,
weather's
Nice.
beautiful though.
Yeah,
seriously.
It was almost 60 and sunny here today, so that's
Oh,
rare
nice.
for upstate New York in general, let alone in February or March, where the hell we are.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Mike, for so
Yeah,
much
man.
for coming on. And
Thanks for having me.
if we'd happily have you back kind of after the flower season, maybe, and just like
Oh,
see what's
man.
going on. If they do something big, just get your reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're welcome
Could you
back
imagine
anytime.
this is the start of my like second hockey career. They like bring me in as a consultant. Like we
Oh,
really like what you said on that podcast.
dude, when
Yeah.
Lawton inevitably gets traded on Friday, we'll send you a message and just get a quick voice note of your
Fuck,
of your
man.
thoughts.
I feel like they're gonna send him somewhere I'm gonna be pissed about too. I just have this gut feeling.
He's coming to Toronto, buddy. I think it's.
Toronto's
it's happening.
it's so loud.
They
This
want him
madness. I
so
think
bad.
Toronto's gonna happen.
Why?
Because he's
Hometown guy. Like
the Leafs are always looking for. We
guys
talked
on the
about.
way out.
No, yeah, that's true. That's true. No, but like guys that are like an immediate like culture shifting kind of
he's
guy.
Awesome. He's awesome.
he's like
he's
the
just-
guy to do that too.
He'd be the guy. He'd be.
Yeah.
He can play up and down the lineup like utility guy that can do all the things that we thought Max Domi would do. And
Oh my god.
the amount of people, dude, that would go absolutely ape shit for this guy in Toronto because they crave like a heart and soul player would be crazy. And
they're the biggest market, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I think like Toronto, their culture is that they can't have a culture. Yeah, more or less, right? Like they like being a Leaf fan is kind of like, oh man, like I love what the Flyers are doing. Like let me like take like some of the things that they do well.
Being a Leafs fan
win,
is
right?
like being a Leafs fan is like being like a fan of like a corporation.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like being like going to the office building and cheering for them or something.
You know
like,
what?
I love Coca-Cola.
They need a Ty Domi, not a Max Domi.
Hell yeah!
Like the Leafs.
You know who wore
652s? What's that?
You know who wore 652s? Ty Domi.
I'm sure he did.
Better believe
it. They for a long time I think have needed someone that is a crazy personality. Like Matthews is amazing, right? But I think lacks a little bit in the leadership department. He's lacking in the heart. I just kind of smell it on him. I think we saw it in the Four Seasons tournament at the end. But I think you see it a lot in his kind of lackluster approach to gameplay sometimes. Like, this guy's not fucking back checking all the time. Get real. I'm Austin Matthews. Like, I'm not, And I think they need a guy that's just like a Ty Domi, like a psychopath. Like, let him out on the ice. Something crazy is going to happen, and it's going to change everyone's attitude about the night. Like a Zach Ronaldo type of like absolute chaos, right? Like, keep him on the bench until it's really needed. And then once a game, just boom, he's going to go out there and take a penalty. But it's like, this is what we need. We need like Toronto needs grit, like in because you're right. It feels corporate. It feels like, well, we're just going through the motion. That's a nice suit you've got on today, Mr. Matthews. Like, it's like, dude, put on some fucking gym shorts and fucking grind it out, and let's see what we could do here. Like, see, all these teams need me. Toronto
That's
Maple
it.
Leafs.
There
Type
you
need
go.
We'll take
Mike Ryan for hire.
without a
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah. Too good.
That's
Too
so
good. You
sick.
could get them onto some
Yeah,
good music
all
too.
right.
God knows they need it. So that'll
Yeah.
help.
I
Oh
know.
my God,
I
they
know.
need it.
That'll help.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks for coming on, Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah,
listen
man.
to Watch
Thank
Me
you, guys.
Bleed, LP of the year.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thanks
that.
so much, Mike, for coming on.
Anytime.
It's been great.
Take care, guys.
All
Thanks,
right.
Mike.
Thanks, man.
See you, buddy. All the
See ya.
best.
Oh, he's gone.
What